He never wanted to be bound, but one reckless bite from a powerful alpha chained his body to a fate he swore he'd reject. Now, torn between fury and forbidden desire, Elior must decide. Watch this thrilling BL thriller unfold. Please like and comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe for more interesting BL stories. The town square of Arvanth was alive with sound that night. Lamps glowed gold in the dusk, hanging from ropes strung between wooden stalls. Musicians clanged cymbals and flutes in unpracticed harmony while the smell of roasted meat and spiced wine drifted through the crowd. The annual founding festival had always been Elior's least favorite day of the year. Too many people, too many eyes. But he'd come anyway. Not for the music, nor the food, nor the dancing, but because his younger sister begged him to. And Elior never could deny her. He kept to the edges, his hood pulled up, trying to look unremarkable. Omegas weren't rare in Arvanth, but an unmarked Omega his age was. Most had long since given in to the inevitability of an alpha's claim. Families encouraged it, society expected it, instincts craved it. But Elior had resisted. He wore his freedom like armor, even if it meant he often walked alone. Tonight, though, his armor felt too thin. Everywhere he turned, couples danced, Alpha and Omega, bonded pairs whose scents intertwined like braided threads. The mark at the side of their necks glowed faintly in the lantern light, a physical brand of possession and belonging. Elior's throat ached at the sight. He hated the pull in his chest. He hated the voice that whispered, "Wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be warmer to belong?" He pushed the thought aside and slipped deeper into the crowd. The clash began by accident. He was heading toward the wine stall when a shoulder collided with his. Not a gentle brush, hard, jarring. His hood slipped, revealing pale skin, sharp cheekbones, and the faint sheen of nervous sweat. "Watch where you're going," Elior muttered, tugging the hood back into place. The man he'd collided with turned, eyes sharp as a wolf's. Tall, broad-shouldered, carrying the kind of presence that made the air heavier. His scent hit Elior like smoke and cedar wood, threaded with dominance so potent it stole the breath from his lungs. An alpha. Not just any alpha. Ronan Vale. Everyone in Arvanth knew him. Reckless, brash, the son of a wealthy merchant family that thrived on deals sealed in blood and instinct. He had a reputation for fights, for women, for arrogance. And now he was staring directly at Elior. "Well," Ronan said slowly, lips curving. "Didn't expect to find you here, Omega." The word dripped from his tongue like honey and poison both. Elior bristled. "You don't know me." "Oh, but I do," Ronan replied, stepping closer. His voice dropped, pitched low so only Elior could hear. The unmarked Omega. Walking around like prey, tempting every alpha's instincts. Dangerous thing to do in a crowd this thick. Heat prickled at Elior's neck. He lifted his chin, refusing to flinch. Then perhaps alphas should learn restraint. Something flickered in Ronan's eyes. Challenge, amusement, hunger. He leaned in, close enough that Elior could feel his breath stir against his ear. "Careful. You'll make me want to test mine." Elior's pulse thundered. He stepped back sharply, glaring. "Stay away from me." The crowd pressed around them, laughter and music drowning out their sharp exchange. But the air between them was taut, a string pulled to breaking. Elior turned, intent on leaving, but Ronan's hand shot out and caught his wrist. The spark of contact jolted through Elior's body like lightning. He hissed, tugging free. "Don't touch me," he spat. Something in Ronan snapped. It happened in less than a breath. One moment Elior was glaring at him, chest heaving. The next, Ronan had him against the rough wood of a stall wall, caging him in with sheer presence. The alpha's scent surged, thick and intoxicating, wrapping around Elior until the noise of the festival blurred into silence. And then, teeth, sharp and burning, pressed against the curve of his neck. Elior gasped, a sound half pain, half shock as Ronan's fangs broke skin. Heat exploded through his veins, a searing tide of instinct and connection that clawed at his insides. His knees buckled, breath catching. The mark sank deep, not just into flesh but into his very core. When Ronan finally pulled back, Elior sagged against the wall, trembling. The world swam around him in dizzy colors. The alpha's eyes glowed faintly in the lantern light, pupils blown wide. His lips were stained crimson. The crowd around them had gone silent, as if the entire square had frozen. Whispers rippled, gasps echoing. He marked him. Unmarked Omega no longer. "Did you see?" Elior lifted a trembling hand to his neck. The skin burned under his fingertips, the mark pulsing with a rhythm that wasn't his own. His body shivered, aching toward the alpha even as his mind recoiled in horror. "You," his voice cracked. He forced the words out. What did you do? Ronan's chest rose and fell, heavy with ragged breath. His hand twitched as though he meant to reach for Elior again, but he stopped himself. For a heartbeat, his face showed something startling, guilt. Then it hardened. I couldn't stop, he said hoarsely. You don't understand. Elior shoved past him, fury and terror clawing up his throat. You think I wanted this? His voice rang, shaking but loud enough for those around them to hear. You've ruined everything. He ran. The night air was sharp against his lungs as he fled the square, weaving through alleys until the festival's music was nothing but a distant hum. He collapsed against the side of a stone building, clutching his neck. The mark throbbed. Not just pain, need. His entire body hummed with awareness of Ronan, a tether pulling tight across the city. It was wrong, vile, invasive, and yet the more he tried to resist it, the more his body betrayed him. His sense spiked, unbidden, betraying arousal he did not consent to. Tears of rage burned his eyes. He struck the wall with his fist, once, twice. Damn you, he whispered, voice breaking. He had sworn never to let this happen. Never to belong to anyone. And in a single reckless moment, Ronan Vale had taken that choice from him. Ronan found him hours later. Elior was sitting on the steps outside his own home, hood down, head in his hands. The sound of boots on stone made him stiffen. Get away from me, Elior said without looking up. I had to come. Ronan's voice was rough, quieter than before. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, Elior bit out. He rose, spinning to face him. You marked me against my will. You bound me like some animal you couldn't control. His chest heaved. I will never forgive you. Ronan flinched, but his gaze didn't waver. I know what I did. I know it was wrong. But it wasn't, Elior, it wasn't just instinct. I've noticed you for months. Don't? Elior's voice cracked. He pressed a shaking hand to his burning neck. Don't you dare try to make this sound like anything but what it was. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Ronan lowered his head. You're right. I can't undo it. But I swear to you, I'll prove I'm not the monster you think I am. Elior's laugh was bitter. You already are. He brushed past Ronan, slamming the door of his house shut behind him. Inside, in the darkness of his room, Elior pressed his face into his pillow, teeth clenched against the sob threatening to break free. His body pulsed with a bond he didn't choose, a bond that tied him to the one person he now hated most. And yet, beneath the anger, a traitorous whisper curled inside him. Why does part of me want him to come back? The morning after the festival was worse than the night itself. Elior awoke drenched in sweat, his sheets tangled around his body like restraints. His pulse raced, his throat dry, his neck searing as though the mark were carved with fire. He pressed his fingers to it, half expecting to find fresh blood. Instead, he felt the faint rise of skin, tender and hot, as if it were still claiming him. And in his dreams, he hated to remember them. Ronan's mouth against his skin, the weight of his body, the scent that clung even now, cedarwood and smoke, threaded with heat that made Elior's stomach knot. The bond pulsed like a tether, dragging him back to that moment against the wall, forcing him to relive it in flashes that left his body aching. Elior cursed under his breath and forced himself out of bed. He dressed quickly, pulling a high-collared tunic that brushed against the mark. The fabric did nothing to soothe the burn. It only reminded him of the claim he never chose. He would go about his day as if nothing happened. He would not think about Ronan. He would not feel him. But as soon as Elior stepped into the market street, the truth hit him like a blow. The bond was a constant thrum, a background hum of awareness. He knew where Ronan was even without seeing him. Knew that somewhere across the city the Alpha was awake, restless, his attention tethered back in Elior's direction. It was maddening. By midday, Elior could no longer deny it. Ronan was near. The awareness sharpened, pulling at his chest like a hook. Elior clenched his jaw and kept his head down, but the air grew heavier, his scent betraying nervous tension. He ducked into a narrow alley, hoping to lose himself in shadow. Running from me already? The voice made his breath hitch. He turned, heart lurching, to find Ronan leaning against the brick wall, arms folded, eyes locked on him. Up close he looked different than last night. Less wild, more controlled, but no less dangerous. His gaze was molten, lingering on Elior's neck where the mark peeked beneath his collar. I told you to stay away, Elior snapped, though his voice wavered. And I said I'd prove myself, Ronan replied evenly. He pushed off the wall and stepped closer. The air between them thickened. Every inch he closed making Elior's pulse stumble. Elior backed up until his shoulders brushed cold stone. His breath came quick, shallow. He hated how his body reacted, the tremor in his legs, the shiver that ran down his spine when Ronan's scent flooded the space. "Don't," Elior whispered, pressing a hand against Ronan's chest when he drew too close. His palm tingled against the solid heat beneath. "Don't come near me." Ronan didn't push forward, but he didn't step back either. He stood there, towering, restrained, as though battling the instinct to touch. His voice dropped low. "You feel it too, don't you?" Elior's fingers curled against his chest before he yanked them away as if burned. "That's the bond?" he hissed. "It means nothing." Ronan's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking. "It means everything." For a moment, silence pressed around them, heavy and trembling. Ronan lifted a hand, slow and careful, until his knuckles brushed Elior's jaw. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a shiver rippling down Elior's spine. His breath hitched, his body leaned in without his consent. He caught himself just in time, shoving Ronan's hand away. "You think you can trap me with this?" Elior's voice cracked, anger and fear warring. "You'll never own me." Ronan's eyes darkened, but he stepped back at last, dragging a hand through his hair. "I don't want to own you," he said quietly. "I want you to see me." The days that followed were torture. No matter how Elior tried, he couldn't escape Ronan. The Alpha seemed to appear everywhere, at the market, near the riverbank, at the library steps. He never forced contact again, but his presence was suffocating. And worse, the bond made Elior's body betray him. When Ronan was near, Elior's scent flared uncontrollably, his skin flushed, his heartbeat thundered. He would cross his arms to hide the shiver, dig nails into his palms to keep from trembling, but it was useless. His body wanted. One evening, while carrying water from the well, Elior stumbled. The bucket tipped, water splashing across the ground. Strong hands caught his elbow before he fell. "Ronan." Their eyes met and time stopped. Ronan's grip was steady, but his breathing was uneven, his gaze hungry despite the restraint that held him frozen. Elior's pulse surged, his skin burning where they touched. "Let go," Elior whispered. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he released him instantly. Still, the ghost of his touch lingered, tingling like fire along Elior's arm. "Why fight it so hard?" Ronan asked softly. "Because it wasn't mine to choose," Elior shot back, though his voice trembled. Ronan looked at him then, truly looked, as if peeling away every wall. For a second, Elior thought he saw pain in those golden eyes, loneliness, guilt, yearning. And that hurt more than anger. The tension only grew sharper. Nights became unbearable. Elior lay awake, sweating, body restless with phantom heat. He dreamed of Ronan's hands, Ronan's mouth, the mark blazing whenever he tried to suppress it. Some mornings he woke with tears on his cheeks from fury at himself, because part of him craved what he hated. One night, unable to sleep, he stepped outside. The street was quiet, moonlight silver on cobblestones. And there, standing at the end of the lane, was Ronan. As if drawn by the same restless pull. Neither spoke at first. The silence hummed between them, the bond thrumming louder than words. Elior's feet moved before he could stop them, carrying him halfway across the distance. Ronan closed the rest, stopping only a breath away. Their eyes locked, heat, anger, desire all tangled into one unbearable knot. Ronan's hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed against Elior's cheek. His thumb stroked once, slow and reverent. Elior's lips parted, a soft, betraying sound catching in his throat. The world narrowed to touch and scent and breath. Then Elior caught himself, shoving Ronan's hand away with a ragged gasp. "No," he snapped, though his voice was hoarse. "I won't be some instinct-driven slave to you." Ronan's chest heaved, his own restraint fraying. For a terrifying heartbeat, Elior thought he might kiss him anyway. But Ronan stepped back, fists clenched at his sides. "You think I don't fight it too?" His voice was raw. "Every second I'm near you, I'm holding myself back. I want you, Elior, more than I've wanted anything. But I won't take what you won't give." The words hit Elior harder than a touch. His heart twisted, his body screamed, and he hated himself for the ache of longing that surged at Ronan's restraint. He turned sharply, retreating into the safety of his doorway. His voice shook as he whispered, "Stay away from me." But the mark burned, and Elior knew deep down that no distance could truly keep them apart. Elior tried to convince himself he was strong enough. For days, he carried on as though the mark were nothing but a wound that would fade. He went to the market, cooked his meals, tended to chores. He smiled stiffly at his sister, reassured neighbors who whispered about him, kept his chin lifted so the world wouldn't see how the mark burned beneath his collar. But the truth haunted him in every heartbeat. The bond thrummed constantly, like an invisible tether stretched taut between him and Ronan. At night, when he lay in his narrow bed, the heat would flare, dragging restless sounds from his throat that made him bury his face in his pillow. He hated it. He hated that even in dreams Ronan's mouth lingered on his skin, his breath scalded against Elior's ear. He hated most of all that when he woke he wasn't sure if the ache in his chest was anger, or longing. It was during an evening storm that the bond pushed them past the edge. Rain lashed against the windows as Elior closed the shutters, the scent of wet earth heavy in the air. He lit a single lamp, the flame flickering against his pale face. The storm should have been comforting. Thunder drowned out thoughts, rain washed away restlessness. But not tonight. The pull in his chest grew sharper, insistent. He knew before the knock sounded who it was. He should have ignored it. He should have locked the door and buried himself under blankets. Instead, Elior's feet carried him forward, fingers trembling as they unlatched the wooden bolt. Ronan stood there, drenched, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, water dripping down the line of his jaw. His shirt clung to his body, outlining the strength beneath. His eyes, even in the storm, burned with an intensity that made Elior's stomach knot. "Elior," he said softly as though the name itself was fragile. Elior swallowed hard, gripping the doorframe. "I told you to stay away. I tried." Ronan's voice was hoarse, raw as the storm. "I can't." Elior should have slammed the door. But instead he stepped aside. Ronan entered, water pooling on the floor where he stood. The tiny room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Elior kept his arms folded tight across his chest, as though that could shield him from the way Ronan's gaze devoured him. "You're soaked," Elior muttered, voice too thin. "You'll catch," he stopped himself, biting the words back. Why should he care? But Ronan had heard the slip. His lips curved faintly, though his eyes remained troubled. "So you do worry." Elior's jaw tightened. "Don't twist my words." Ronan stepped closer, slow, careful, as though approaching a frightened animal. The bond thrummed louder, each step magnifying the heat coursing through Elior's veins. His back brushed the edge of the table before he realized he'd been retreating. "Stop," Elior whispered, though his voice lacked bite. Ronan did stop, but only a breath away. The scent of cedarwood and stormwater wrapped around Elior, dizzying. He felt cornered, but not in the way he'd expected. His body leaned forward, betraying him, drawn to the warmth, the closeness. "I hate this," Elior said through clenched teeth. "I know," Ronan murmured. His hand lifted, hovering near Elior's cheek but not touching. "I hate myself for what I did. But I can't hate this." His gaze dropped to Elior's lips, lingering. "I can't hate you." Elior's breath shuddered. The space between them was unbearable, a thread stretched to snapping. His fingers curled against the table's edge until his knuckles ached. "Don't," Elior said again, but the word came out softer, weaker. Ronan's restraint trembled. His hand brushed Elior's jaw at last, tentative, reverent. The touch was gentle, but it set Elior's entire body aflame. His eyes fluttered shut against his will, a quiet sound catching in his throat. When he opened them again, Ronan was closer still, their foreheads nearly touching, breath mingling in the charged air. The silence roared louder than thunder. Ronan's lips hovered just shy of Elior's, close enough that the Omega could feel the ghost of heat. Elior's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow bursts, every nerve screaming for the kiss, every thought screaming against it. His hands lifted, pressing weakly against Ronan's chest. He meant to push, to end this, but instead they lingered, fingers curling into damp fabric. His body betrayed him, trembling with need. Ronan's eyes squeezed shut, his whole body taut with restraint. His voice was a rasp. "Say no, Elior. Say it and I'll stop." Elior's lips parted, but no sound came. The mark pulsed, throbbing with heat, twisting his words into silence. Ronan's breath shuddered against his mouth. For a heartbeat, it seemed inevitable, that the last barrier would shatter, that lips would meet, that the bond would consume them both. Then Elior wrenched his head aside, gasping. "No." The words sliced through the storm. Ronan froze. His hand dropped, his body retreating a single step. His chest rose and fell, ragged, as though it took everything in him to obey. "I told you," Elior whispered, though his own body trembled violently, "I won't be bound by this." Ronan swallowed hard, fists clenched at his sides. "I would never force you again," he said hoarsely. "Not like before." The room fell into silence, broken only by the rain hammering against the shutters. Elior pressed a hand to his mouth, horrified by the truth trembling inside him, that he had wanted it. that if he hadn't turned away he might have surrendered. "Go," Elior whispered, unable to meet his eyes. Ronan lingered a moment longer, as though burning the sight of him into memory. Then he turned and left, the door closing softly behind him. Elior collapsed against the table, his knees too weak to hold him. His hand lifted to his neck, feeling the mark pulse beneath his skin, hot and alive. Tears stung his eyes, though he wasn't sure if they were from rage, fear, or the ache of longing. He whispered into the empty room, voice breaking. "Why can't I hate you enough?" The storm answered with silence. The storm had passed, but its weight lingered. 4 days, Elior lived in a haze of silence. He went through motions without memory, fetching water, cooking meals, tending small tasks, yet everything felt hollow. The mark pulsed less violently now, not burning but aching, as though reminding him that something unfinished waited in the shadows. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ronan's face from that night. The storm-wet hair clinging to his skin, the way his voice broke on Elior's name, the unbearable restraint in the moment before their lips could have touched. And he remembered his own betrayal, how badly he'd wanted it. Elior cursed himself for it, yet the truth gnawed at him. He couldn't call it hatred anymore. Couldn't call it only instinct. The bond was real, yes, but so was the ache beneath his ribs when Ronan wasn't near. The problem wasn't just the mark. It was himself. Ronan didn't come again, not right away. And the absence was worse than his presence. Elior realized it one night as he sat by his shuttered window, staring out at the lantern-lit street. The quiet pressed too heavily. For the first time since the bite, the tether between them felt faint, stretched thin, as if Ronan were deliberately holding himself back. The space should have been freedom. Instead, Elior felt lonely. On the 4th day he couldn't take it anymore. He found Ronan by the river, away from the bustle of the town. The Alpha sat on a boulder near the water's edge, shirt sleeves rolled, forearms braced against his knees, staring at the rushing current with a frown carved into his face. He looked exhausted. Not physically, no, his body was still strong, his presence still sharp, but there was a hollow cast to his eyes, a weight that hadn't been there before. When Elior approached, Ronan startled, then quickly masked it. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Neither should you," Elior countered. His throat tightened, but he pressed on. "But I came anyway." Ronan's jaw flexed. He turned back to the river. "I promised myself I'd stay away. That if you wanted nothing to do with me, I'd respect it." His voice cracked. "It's the only way I know how to atone." The words pierced something deep inside Elior. He stepped closer, arms folding against his chest, though his voice was softer than he intended. "Do you regret it?" Ronan looked at him, then truly looked. His golden eyes burned with so many things: shame, hunger, longing, desperation. "Every day," he whispered. "I regret taking your choice. But I don't regret that it was you." Elior's breath caught. His chest ached with the weight of it, the sincerity in his voice, the way Ronan's hands trembled where they rested on his knees. Silence stretched, filled only by the rush of the river. Elior sank onto the rock beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. He stared at the water, not trusting himself to look at Ronan's face. "I tried to hate you," Elior admitted at last. The confession tasted bitter and sweet all at once. "I wanted to. I told myself the bond was nothing but instinct, that every feeling was false. But," he swallowed hard, his voice dropping. "If that were true, why does it hurt more when you're gone?" Ronan's breath hitched. His hand twitched as if he longed to reach for Elior, but he didn't. He only whispered, hoarse and fragile, "Say that again." Elior turned to him then, eyes blazing with conflict, with trembling honesty. "I don't want to be bound against my will. But I don't want to be without you either." The Alpha's control shattered in that moment. He surged forward, but still, stopped short, foreheads pressing together, breath ragged. His hands hovered uselessly in the air, as though terrified of scaring Elior away. "Tell me to stop," Ronan rasped. "Tell me, and I swear I'll never touch you again." Elior's chest rose and fell. His hands lifted slowly, deliberately, until they settled against Ronan's chest, feeling the wild thrum of his heart beneath. For the first time he didn't push him away. "I don't want you to stop," Elior whispered. Ronan groaned, the sound torn from deep within, and finally, his arms closed around Elior, pulling him close. The embrace wasn't rough, wasn't desperate. It was careful, reverent, as though Ronan were cradling something fragile. Elior melted against him, shuddering as warmth enveloped him. The bond flared, not as fire but as light, flooding through him with startling gentleness. It wasn't like the first time, violent and invasive. This was different. Softer. Chosen. Ronan buried his face in Elior's shoulder, voice muffled. You don't know how long I've wanted this. To hold you, not because instinct demanded it, but because you let me. Elior's throat burned with unshed tears. He tilted his head slightly, exposing the curve of his neck where the mark throbbed faintly. Ronan's breath stuttered against the scarred skin, but he didn't bite, didn't even press his mouth there. Instead he whispered, "Not unless you ask." Elior's hand rose, trembling, to cup Ronan's jaw. Their eyes met, one last fragile moment of hesitation, and then Elior leaned in, closing the distance between them. The kiss was tentative at first, uncertain, a brush of lips that lingered with unspoken words. But when Ronan's hands tightened gently on his waist, when Elior didn't pull away, it deepened, slow, aching, filled with the weight of everything they'd denied. Heat coiled low in Elior's stomach, but it wasn't overwhelming this time. It wasn't a fire consuming him, it was warmth, spreading, filling, grounding. For the first time the bond didn't feel like chains. It felt like home. Later, when they pulled apart, both breathless, Elior rested his forehead against Ronan's. His lips tingled, his body trembled, but his heart felt strangely calm. "This time," he whispered, "it was my choice." Ronan's answering smile was small, almost disbelieving, but it lit his entire face. He pressed a soft kiss to Elior's temple, lingering. "Then I'll never take that from you again." The river roared around them, carrying the last fragments of storm away. And Elior closed his eyes, finally allowing himself to lean fully into the arms that held him, not as a prisoner of instinct but as a partner in something deeper.